What if the person you trusted with your life, the one you loved, shared your home with, and believed would protect your children, turned into your worst nightmare? In today's video, we uncover the chilling story of Christian Longo, a man who appeared to be the perfect husband and a caring father in the eyes of his wife and children. But beneath that facade was a dangerous man driven by greed and deception. Stay tuned as we unravel how this loving father became the monster who shattered his family in the most unthinkable way.
Mother and her 3 children murdered.
Her husband is found in Mexico pretending to be a New York Times writer. 48 Hours' Maureen Marr says that's when the murder case became a Hollywood movie.
Christian and Mary Jane were living the American dream in Newport, Oregon. Christian was charming and charismatic, adored by his family. Mary Jane was a devoted wife and mother, completely dedicated to her family. They were well-liked in the community and active in their church, but appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, darkness lurked. The idyllic life they portrayed was a facade. The Longos were hiding secrets. Their perfect life was about to unravel, and the consequences would be devastating. Behind the scenes, the Longo family was struggling. Christian's business ventures were failing, and the family was deeply in debt. He began to lie to Mary Jane about their finances. As the pressure mounted, Christian's behavior became erratic. He started disappearing for days, offering vague explanations. Mary Jane began to suspect something was wrong. She demanded answers, but Christian was evasive. Arguments became more frequent, and the home filled with tension. Christian felt trapped in a web of his own making. He saw no escape from his financial ruin. Desperation took hold. He made a fateful decision. He would choose his own freedom, even if it meant sacrificing everything he claimed to hold dear. The once happy home was now a battleground. The facade of the perfect family was crumbling, and the truth was about to come to light.
It started on December 19th, 2001. We got a report of a child in the bay. My name is Trish Miller, and I'm the lead investigator. And they discovered a second child.
This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Investigators in Oregon soon found their mother, Mary Jane Longo, and baby Madison at the bottom of the bay.
We knew that our focal suspect was going to be Chris Longo.
It was discovered that Christian Longo had caught a plane to Cancun, Mexico.
He was spotted and arrested and charged with the murder of his wife and 3 children.
On December 19, 2001, the unthinkable happened. The Longo family was reported missing. As police investigated, a horrifying discovery was made. The bodies of Zachary, Sadie, and Madison were found in a coastal inlet. The community was devastated. The search continued for Mary Jane and Christian. Police suspected Christian had killed his family and fled. A nationwide manhunt was launched. Christian Longo became one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives. The story of the Longo family tragedy was about to take even more shocking turns. Christian Longo possessed a natural charm that could captivate a room. He was a born salesman, able to talk his way into almost anything. This charm, coupled with his good looks, made him the center of attention. He craved admiration and validation. Driven by an appetite for the finer things, Christian chased a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Mary Jane, blinded by love, trusted him implicitly. Despite mounting financial pressure, Christian maintained a facade of success. He showered his family with gifts, sinking deeper into debt. But the walls were closing in, and the truth would soon come to light. The weight of Christian's financial misdeeds grew heavier each day. Bills piled up, creditors called relentlessly. Desperation set in, driving him to reckless behavior. He became a master manipulator, conning people out of money. His lies became bolder, his deceptions more elaborate. Mary Jane started to question Christian's explanations. The once unwavering trust was beginning to fray. She loved Christian deeply, but sensed something was terribly wrong. The man she thought she knew was becoming a stranger. And their financial reality was a far cry from the picture of prosperity. Christian's web of lies grew more tangled. His facade began to crumble. Rumors of his financial improprieties circulated. Creditors threatened legal action. Mary Jane confronted Christian about their dire financial situation. She discovered hidden documents revealing the truth. The foundation of their life together was crumbling. The idyllic life they portrayed was an illusion. The truth was poisoning their happiness. And the consequences were about to crash down upon them. Christian backed into a corner, saw only one way out. His charm had failed him. The consequences of his actions were catching up. Desperation consumed him. He concocted a horrific plan. He would silence his problems and disappear. The devoted husband and father had vanished. He was now a monster, driven by indifference to human life. The stage was set for a tragedy. The Longo family was about to be extinguished. Fear gnawed at Christian's facade. The threat of exposure pushed him to the edge. He had to disappear, silencing the witnesses, his family. He justified his actions with chilling logic. He convinced himself it was the only way to protect his future. Christian began to make preparations. He purchased supplies, plotting the demise of his family. He was no longer the charming salesman. He was a monster. His heart turned to ice, and the darkness awaited him. As the night descended upon the Longo household. Christian moved through the house with a terrifying purpose. He extinguished the lights of their lives. He stole their futures, their laughter silenced. Mary Jane fought for her life and her children's. Her cries for mercy fell on deaf ears. Christian silenced her forever. The house fell silent, filled with betrayal and death. The Longo family was extinguished in one horrific night, victims of a monster hiding in plain sight. Under the cover of darkness, Christian loaded the bodies into his car. He drove to a desolate coastline. With chilling detachment, he disposed of the bodies. He weighed them down, burying his guilt beneath the waves. The ocean, indifferent to the horror, concealed the truth. Christian stood alone, adrift in a sea of his own making. He left no trace, or so he thought. But the ocean has a way of revealing its secrets. The truth would eventually surface, and the consequences would be inescapable.
Good evening. Glad you're with us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
And I'm Natalie Marmion. Welcome to K2 News at 5. K2 was first to report the news. One of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives is in custody.
Accused family killer Christian Longo is in a Houston, Texas jail tonight. The 27-year-old Longo arrived at Bush Intercontinental Airport this morning, accompanied by FBI agents. Longo was arrested by Mexican authorities and the FBI last night at a beach resort in Mexico.
With the horrific deed done, Christian fled, his escape as meticulously planned as the crime itself. He transformed himself into a phantom, shedding his identity, along with the remnants of his conscience. He traveled south.
But when he was caught, he had taken on another identity.
My name is Michael Finkel. I was a writer for the New York Times Magazine. I learned that while Christian Longo was in Mexico, he was pretending to be a writer for the New York Times. In fact, he was pretending to be me. I was like, I'm going to write him a brief letter.
It would be the first of many letters, a journey into the mind of an accused murderer. It became a book and now a Hollywood movie.
Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Longo.
Call me Chris.
So why me?
I followed your whole career. I guess I felt like I knew you. I want to tell you my side of this. Only you.
A gripping Hollywood movie. A chilling true story.
Towards the promise of anonymity, the warmth of the sun, a stark contrast to the icy grip of his guilt. He chose a new name, a new life, desperately clinging to the belief that he could outrun the darkness he carried within. He buried himself in the crowds, seeking solace in the anonymity of strangers, their faces a blur of indifference to his internal torment. He embraced the illusion of freedom, the taste of it bittersweet on his tongue. But freedom, he would soon discover, is a fickle mistress, and the past has a way of catching up with even the most cunning of fugitives. The ghost of his family, their faces forever etched in his memory, haunted his waking hours, their whispers echoing in the silence of his solitude. The life he had so desperately sought to preserve, the freedom he had purchased at such a terrible cost, would prove to be a prison of his own making. For there is no escape from the truth, no sanctuary from the consequences of one's actions. And the price of his betrayal would be exacted in the cold, hard currency of justice. Days turned into weeks, and the absence of the Longo family became a heavy silence that settled over the once peaceful town of Newport. Neighbors, accustomed to the sounds of children's laughter and the friendly greetings exchanged over white picket fences, shared uneasy glances across their morning coffees. Where had the Longos gone? Whispers of concern turned into murmurs of speculation as the days stretched into an agonizing wait. Mary Jane, a devoted mother, wouldn't leave her children. Christian, despite his flaws, seemed to dote on his family. Something was terribly wrong. The idyllic facade of the Longo family, the picture of normalcy they had so carefully cultivated, began to crack under the strain of their unexplained disappearance. The tight-knit community, bound by shared values and the comforting rhythm of small-town life, found their sense of security shaken. Fear, like a creeping vine, began to take root, its tendrils reaching into the heart of their once peaceful existence. The Longo family's disappearance was a chilling reminder that darkness could lurk even in the most idyllic of settings. The local police, accustomed to dealing with petty thefts and the occasional public intoxication, found themselves thrust into a mystery that defied easy explanation. The Longo family's disappearance was like a puzzle box, each clue leading to more questions, each dead end deepening the sense of unease that had settled over Newport. The discovery, when it came, was as swift as it was heartbreaking. The bodies of young Zachary and Sadie, their small frames betraying the violence of their inn, were found washed ashore, their innocence lost to the depths of a crime that defied comprehension. The tranquility of the Oregon coast, its rugged beauty, a stark contrast to the horror it now revealed, was shattered by the discovery. The news spread through Newport like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of grief and outrage. And the Longos, once the subject of whispers and speculation, were now the victims of an unspeakable tragedy. The community, united in grief, demanded justice for the innocent lives lost. The eyes of the nation turned towards the small coastal town, their collective breath held hostage by the unfolding tragedy. The Longo case became a morbid fascination. The details splashed across newspapers and television screens. The questions surrounding the case, like the relentless waves crashing against the shore, demanded answers. The idyllic image of Newport, the quaint coastal town, where life moved at a slower pace, was forever tainted by the stain of violence. The Longo case had ripped away the veil of normalcy, exposing the fragility of life and the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of even the most peaceful communities. The Longo case captures headlines. The Longo family tragedy became a national obsession. A seemingly perfect family, a web of deceit, a cross-country manhunt, and the haunting question of how a father could commit such an act. News channels provided round-the-clock coverage, dissecting every detail of the case. From financial troubles to erratic behavior, experts weighed in, offering theories and opinions. The Longo case became a water-cooler conversation, a grim reminder that evil could lurk in unexpected places. The Longo family tragedy became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the consequences of unchecked desperation. South of the border, a desperate gamble for a new life. Christian Longo drifted south, seeking refuge in Mexico. He traded Oregon's chilling winds for Cancun's sun-drenched beaches. His pockets were lined with stolen cash, his mind racing with plans for a new life. He adopted the identity of Michael Finkel, a journalist. He spun tales of adventure, crafting a new persona. He mingled with tourists, his charm a shield. He sought solace in tequila sunsets, trying to drown out his past. For a while, the illusion held. He reveled in the anonymity, finding freedom in deception. But even in paradise, the past has a way of catching up. The life he'd built on lies was a fragile house of cards.
Arrest. FBI agents led Christopher Longo out of the airport in Houston less than 24 hours after they caught up with him in Mexico. Longo had been placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list Friday, and that night, the FBI got a call from a woman in Montreal who thought she had seen him.
Section 2. Paradise Lost. The walls close in. Word of the Longo family tragedy, fueled by the insatiable hunger of the 24-hour news cycle, had spread far beyond the borders of Oregon. Christian Longo's face, once a symbol of normalcy, was plastered on wanted posters, his name whispered with a mixture of fear and fascination. The illusion of anonymity he'd so carefully crafted began to crumble as the long arm of the law stretched across the border, its grip tightening with each passing day. The FBI, working tirelessly to track down the fugitive, followed the trail of his deceit, each breadcrumb leading them closer to their prey. They interviewed witnesses, piecing together the fragments of his fabricated life in Mexico. The net was closing in, the walls of his carefully constructed paradise collapsing around him. Paranoia became his constant companion, He saw danger in every shadow, heard his name whispered in the rustling of palm trees. The carefree facade he'd so carefully cultivated began to slip, revealing the fear that gnawed at his soul. Sleep offered no escape, his dreams haunted by the faces of his victims, their eyes accusing, their voices demanding justice. The life he'd so desperately tried to create, the freedom he'd stained with the blood of his family, was slipping away. The illusion of escape was just that, an illusion. The truth, like a pack of hungry wolves, was closing in, ready to tear away his mask of normalcy and expose the monster beneath. Justice's long reach, from beaches to bars. Fate had other plans. Media attention sealed Christian Longo's fate. His face became a beacon. A tourist contacted authorities. The end was swift. Mexican authorities descended upon the bar. The game was over. Christian Longo was extradited back to the United States. His journey starkly contrasted the one to Mexico. Gone was the arrogance. A chilling resignation took its place. He was about to face the American justice system. His trial would captivate the nation. The consequences, like the tide, were about to wash over him. The weight of evidence, a case built on circumstantial proof. The trial of Christian Longo began in the spring of 2003. The eyes of the nation turned towards the courtroom. The prosecution, armed with circumstantial evidence, laid out their case. They presented damning financial records, exposing Christian's fraudulent schemes. They showcased his meticulous planning and efforts to cover his tracks. Witness testimonies painted a damning picture of his actions. Neighbors and friends revealed glimpses of the man behind the mask. The prosecution's case, a meticulously woven tapestry of circumstantial proof. The defendant's plea, a twisted narrative of innocence. Christian Longo, seated at the defense table, a study in forced composure, maintained his innocence throughout the trial. His defense team, tasked with the Herculean effort of defending the indefensible, crafted a narrative that strained credulity, a desperate attempt to deflect blame and sow seeds of doubt among the jurors. They argued that Christian, while guilty of financial misdeeds and undoubtedly a flawed individual, was not capable of such unspeakable violence. They painted a picture of a man driven to the brink by circumstances beyond his control, a victim of his own poor choices, but not a cold-blooded killer. They suggested alternative theories, pointing fingers at unnamed assailants, shadowy figures lurking in the background of Christian's fabricated life. They sought to undermine the prosecution's timeline, highlighting inconsistencies, however minor, in an attempt to cast doubt on the strength of their case. Their arguments, however, rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming evidence. The prosecution, armed with the truth, dismantled the defense's claims, point by point, exposing the flaws in their logic and the desperation behind their tactics. The jury, tasked with separating fact from fiction, was left to grapple with the weight of the evidence and the unsettling charisma of a man who proclaimed his innocence while the shadows of his crimes loomed large. The jury, a microcosm of society, found themselves thrust into the heart of a moral and legal labyrinth, tasked with the solemn duty of delivering a verdict. They wrestled with the complexities of the case, the weight of the evidence pressing down on them like a physical burden. They listened intensely as the judge instructed them on the law, the concept of reasonable doubt echoing in the silence of the courtroom. They revisited the evidence, their faces etched with a mixture of concentration and unease as they grappled with the gruesome details of the case. Days turned into nights as they deliberated, their every word, every gesture scrutinized for clues to their decision. The pressure was immense. The responsibility of determining a man's fate, a heavy burden. They were ordinary citizens, thrust into an extraordinary situation, forced to confront the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their own community. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read, the words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. Guilty on all counts. The weight of Christian Longo's crimes, the sheer brutality of his actions, had left no room for doubt. The jury, their duty fulfilled, had spoken. Justice for the victims and their loved ones had been served.
It just feels like something's been lifted off, for sure.
The first call Kathy made after hearing from the FBI was to her husband Mark Baker, Mary Jane's brother. He says news of Longo's capture doesn't erase the pain of losing his sister, but at least now justice will be served.
The kids, too, you know, they didn't even know right from wrong, and they never got to live a life or to be happy or sad or whatever, you know. That part still hurts, and it always will hurt, but at least we have some closure. At least we know he's not out sitting on the beach having a drink or thinking he got away with something, because he did not get away with it, and he won't get away with it.
Served. On April 16, 2003, Christian Longo was sentenced to death. For the families of Mary Jane, Zachary, Sadie, and Madison, the sentence brought a bittersweet sense of closure. The man who had shattered their lives would pay the ultimate price for his crimes. Christian Longo, once a master manipulator, was now stripped of his freedom. He would spend the rest of his days on death row at the Oregon State Penitentiary.
Christian Longo is now here at the Harris County Jail. He arrived in Houston this morning. Since then, Longo has been in FBI custody, but because he voluntarily agreed to return to the States, no federal fugitive charges will be pressed. Longo, in the meantime, will remain here at the jail awaiting extradition. For the present, his bond has been set at nearly $1 million. I'm Deborah Wrigley, reporting in Houston for K2 News. Now back to you.
The Longo family tragedy left an indelible scar on the town of Newport, Oregon. A chilling reminder that even in the most idyllic of settings, darkness can lurk beneath the surface. The case, with its horrific details and the unsettling charisma of its perpetrator, sent shockwaves through the community, shattering their sense of security and testing the limits of their compassion. The ripples of the tragedy extended far beyond the immediate families of the victims. The community, once a tight-knit tapestry of shared values and experiences, grappled with a collective trauma. The aftershocks felt in schools, churches, and living rooms across the town. Parents held their children a little closer, their hearts heavy with a newfound awareness of the fragility of life, the need for healing, for understanding, and for a sense of closure became paramount. Support groups formed, offering a safe haven for those struggling to cope with the emotional fallout. The community, drawing strength from their shared grief, rallied around the families of the victims, offering comfort, support, and a shoulder to cry on. The road to recovery was long and arduous, marked by setbacks and tears. But through it all, the spirit of Newport endured. They refused to let the darkness define them, choosing instead to honor the memory of the victims by rebuilding their lives and their community, brick by brick, act of kindness by act of kindness. The Longo family tragedy, with its haunting narrative of betrayal and loss, captured the nation's attention. Writers, filmmakers, and podcasters were drawn to the story's complexities and the enigma of Christian Longo. Michael Finkel's true story explored the unsettling relationship between the killer and the writer. Documentaries offered glimpses into the investigation, trial, and the crime's impact. Fictionalized accounts explored family secrets and the allure of a double life. These stories captivated imaginations and confronted uncomfortable truths about human nature. The Longo family tragedy remains shrouded in a chilling enigma. Christian Longo took many of his secrets to his grave, leaving unanswered questions. What motivated a seemingly devoted husband and father to commit such acts? Was it financial deceptions, fear of exposure, or a darker impulse? The answers lie buried in Christian Longo's psyche. We grapple with the possibility that some acts of evil defy rational explanation. The Longo family tragedy reminds us of the capacity for both love and cruelty. It challenges us to confront the darkness within ourselves and society. We must honor the victims by advocating for justice and promoting healing. We must honor the victims by advocating for justice.